So let's get the elephant out of the way right now. Film photography is expensive. The cameras, the film processing, scanning, all of those things really add up over time. And I believe if we can do things along the way to make things that are exorbitantly expensive more accessible, then we should do those things. What's up, y'all? Summer here. Let's talk photography. So this week I decided to look into Jobo units. I've been processing my film at home and really getting a handle on how to do that well. Now, I have lots of experience with processing black and white film. I can do that with my eyes closed. I guess I do in a lot of instances because you have to be in complete darkness. But I can process black and white film with great ease and I get wonderful results every single time. But developing color film is a whole nother beast, and I've been slowly accumulating the things that I need to do it well, not just in terms of having the process go well and getting really good end results, but also having the process go as efficiently as possible. So I started looking into Jobo units. It would be a great system to keep my water at temp and agitate my tanks, but they are ridiculously expensive, y'all. Ridiculously expensive for what they do. And when I started reading the reviews did not sell me on this thing. A lot of them talked about how easily the systems broke down. They talked about how the system was not as good as it should be at maintaining water temperature. And at the end of the day, the Jobo unit is simply an agitating device. So that got me thinking, why would I pay this much money for an agitating device that I could maybe make myself? So I spent this week going down that route, making my own Jobo style agitating unit, and I want to show you how I pulled that off. When it comes down to activities like photography, it's a very expensive activity, which can make it inaccessible in a lot of ways for people who could potentially have a whole lot of value and wealth of perspective to add to the medium. So I like to approach this from the angle of, if I can help to make it accessible, I will. So that's what I did. I went through and took this really expensive device and rebuilt the core of what it does in a way that's hella cheap. So let's go ahead. I'm going to show you how I did it. I'm going to take you through that journey, and I'm going to give you advice on how you can make one of these yourself. Let's do it. These are the components that I'm going to be working with. I'm just going to quickly run through and tell you what everything is. So right here I have ABS PVC pipe. Can it be ABS and PVC? I think so. It's ABS PVC pipe. And then on the ends, if I could take it off, I got these ABS caps to put on all ends of the pipe. So I got 2 of these guys with 4 caps. The reason I got the caps, I'm going to drill little holes in these so that I'll be able to basically skewer them, and that'll allow for me to create the platform for the spinning mechanism, right? So in addition to that, I have a metal wire that I'm going to be working with. I have L brackets, resin. These guys are chopsticks. I'm going to use them to stir the resin. I have a cup around here somewhere. I'm not sure where I put it. I have a cup around here somewhere for the resin. And then this is a motor for a RC boat. So a remote control boat. And I'm going to use this because it spins. This guy is going to be the mechanism that's going to create the spinning motion. Oh, and then last but not least, this is a sheet of 1/4 inch plexiglass. This is going to be the base for all of these things to be connected to. So structurally, what it'll look like in its most simplest form, in its simplest form. 1 second, open this up. So I made sure to get brackets that are super rust resistant. This is going to spend a whole lot of time in water, so I wanted to make sure that I got brackets that would resist rust as much as possible. Other things that I checked for, I wanted to make sure that the bracket in relation to the pipe, it didn't give too much clearance from the plexiglass, but it also didn't give not enough clearance. So this was pretty much perfect. These brackets are, let me see, I got it. These are 3-inch L brackets. So the way that it's gonna work, there'll be L brackets on both sides. My goal in terms of the dimensions of the pipe is that it needs to be able to accommodate my biggest tank, which is this guy, my 5-reel tank, my Patterson 5-reel tank, or of course it depends on what size film you're developing, but I wanted to make sure that the dimensions of this whole system was big enough to accommodate this guy. Right, so the L brackets will sit here on either side. The pipe needs to be cut down a bit, but the pipe will rest between these L brackets, suspended by this guy, connected to this guy. It's actually pretty simple. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. The first step in the process is to resin these parts down. It's going to need time to dry, so I'm not going to be able to finish the full construction today, but I'll be able to start. So I'm going to go ahead and get to it. So these pieces are securely glued to the acrylic sheet. The next task, I'm going to take these guys and cut them down to size. They need to fit between this space. So I'm going to do a little marking, and then I'm going to take it outside and cut it, and then come back and do another dry fitting. These two are going to be cut to the same dimensions. Let's go. So I'm going to use this reciprocating saw to do the cutting. It may be a little bit of overkill. It could also be done with just a hacksaw cut by hand. Got it. All right, cool. All right, so I'm going to give it a try with this reciprocating saw. As I already mentioned, it may be overkill and it may not work, but we'll see. Well, that went really well. All right, let's see. So these are cut down to the size that I need them to be. These are going to act as the mechanism, or a big part of the mechanism, that's going to rotate or agitate my film tank. There we go. So the way it's going to work, these guys are going to fit in between here like this. One on each inside of each bracket, and I'm going to drill a hole through here, which is where this will make its way through. So essentially we'll have a little piece of metal that comes through here, the same thing on the other side, and that will be the mechanism that these are able to rotate themselves on. So the next step that I have to do, I have to take these caps, make sure I drill a perfectly centered circle that's to the dimensions of this, and we're going to work with the resin to adhere this guy inside of the tube, right? Next step, let's go. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up. I have a lot more things on my desk. I received some really cool goodies in the mail, but I'll share that with you at a different day. I'm going to go ahead and start drilling the holes so I can continue with the construction of this setup. Let's go. All my holes are drilled. I'm going to go ahead and start the next step of the process. In order to make sure the metal wire stays nice and in place inside these caps, I'm going to resin them in. I love working with resin, if you can't tell. So to fix the problem of the holes, or I wouldn't call it a problem, the challenge of the holes being a little bigger than I want them to be, I'm going to take this tape and I'm going to tape it on one side. What this is going to do is it's going to act as a block that will keep the resin in place, kind of like almost like it's molding it in place. I'm going to put tape on all of these guys, and then when it's time to put the wire in place, I still need to cut it. I'm just going to send it through. I'm going to make a little tiny cut, and I'm going to send it through the tape as perfectly centered as I can, and then I'm going to sit these guys on a surface, pour the resin in place, and let it set. That's going to take about a day. So I'm going to go ahead and finish getting all these parts prepped and ready to go. Such good progress. Now that I have the caps assembled with their metal components, I'm going to take all of these individual pieces and start putting them together into one solidified unit. Let's go. Building a unit for yourself, I'm going to put the links below for where you can find all of the components that you need. Let's take a minute and talk about cost, because that's what this whole experiment is about: saving money on photographic equipment. Right out the gate, a Jobo unit could cost you this much. And for the components that I purchased to pull together this experimental agitating unit, I paid this much. It's a pretty big difference between how much a full Jobo unit costs. Now, the only thing that's missing out of this equation is the sous vide. One of the other things that one of the other things that a Jobo unit does is it maintains the water temperature. And for me to create that effect, I use a sous vide. The sous vide that I purchased, I'll also put a link below for that as well. This is how much my sous vide costs. So this, in addition to how much it cost me to build the unit itself, it came out to a grand total of pretty good. I'm really excited about that. Everything about this process was learning. I pivoted and shift as I needed to. as different challenges arose. And I figured it out step by step so that I could get to this. It's not 100% finished yet, and we're going to talk about why. I'm going to tell you the final things that I need to do to it. But in terms of functionality, it's already very clear to me that it's going to do exactly what I built it to do. And I'm really, really, really stoked about that. Because when I started this journey, I had no idea whether or not it was going to work out the way that I was envisioning. But it totally is. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about what's left for me to complete this and why I haven't completed it just quite yet. Go ahead and sit it down. So the last bits of things that I need to do to the unit is I need to add the motor. It is going to be motor operated, and the issue came with the motor that I purchased. So things you need to know: the motor that you pick up, it has to be water resistant. It has to be able to deal with being submerged in water, because this entire platform is going to be submerged in water. I'm going to make a few other edits to it to make sure that it doesn't float and things of that nature, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So you have to make sure that the motor you get can be submerged in water, and this one can. It is a motor built for like RC tugboats, but for whatever reason, when I connect this motor to the power source, instead of the fan blade spinning, it seizes up, meaning that I know it's receiving the power. I can hear it making a buzzing sound, but the propeller itself doesn't move. And when I go to move it with my finger, I can feel a strong amount of resistance keeping the motor from moving. I'm assuming that this unit in and of itself is malfunctioning, so I'm gonna have to get a new motor, and then I'll be able to attach it to the system in the way that it needs to, the way that it needs to be, the way that I designed it. And I'll give you an update video on how that process went. So in terms of all of these parts, I'm working with a simple RC battery. This will be outside of the water. It is, let's see, 6,200 microamp hours is what this battery is. I basically purchased the battery that would give me the most amount of working time without being a lithium-based battery, because those can be dangerous. I'm not saying that they necessarily inherently are, but they can be dangerous, and I just didn't want to deal with having to keep the battery in a fire-safe bag or box or any of that other stuff. So I elected to stay away from the lithium route. And the higher you get in amp hours, the more likely the battery is going to be a lithium-based battery, right? And then I have this guy, which is my speed control unit. This is really important. So this speed control unit allows me to control the speed of the fan. And this is important because without this, that motor is just going to run at its full capacity, which is going to be too fast for what we need in terms of our agitation. So this guy lets you adjust the speed, including turning it off. I have these connectors that I added to the unit, and it simply allows me to connect my battery power like so, and then I can turn it on. We know it's on because of the indicator light, and then it allows you to up the amount of power. The light gets brighter as we add in more power. right? So all of these are the components that I need to finish adding in the electrical aspect of this unit. These guys are going to exist outside of the water. The motor is going to be inside of the water, fully submerged with the unit itself. Now, this particular battery, all of these connectors, these guys, I added them on because the battery can be recharged. This is really important. And I wanted to make sure that I maintained that capability. I could have cut the wires directly, connected it inside of this particular unit, but then I would lose the ability to recharge this battery. And then I also wanted to be able to connect and disconnect this from the motor as well, so that way when I put the unit away and store it, I can disconnect all of these components and decrease the chances that they get damaged in some way, shape, or form, right? So that's the last step that I have. I started researching other motors that I can purchase, but I haven't quite pulled the trigger on one just yet. I'm probably going to do that in the next couple of days, but I want to make sure that I don't make this mistake again. I want to make sure that I get a motor that will work the way that I need it to right out of the box. So I'll keep you updated on how that goes, right? But for now, this is a 100% success in terms of my expectations and my design and where I wanted it to be as of now, right? All right, y'all, so thank you for watching. If you have any questions about the unit, any questions about that can help you build one yourself, by all means drop a comment below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, let me know how I can improve it for next time. Follow me on Instagram. The name is Summer Seeking. That's all I have for now. Until next week, y'all. Peace.